Oh, should we start? Let's start. How's it going, everybody? It's me, Comic Crack. I'm back. I'm just going to get my essential oil concoction bubbling away here. Had a chat this afternoon with Rasa over on her channel. So go and check that out. Is it working? Yeah, that's working. Go and check that out. We talked for a couple hours on her channel. We haven't had a chance to sit down for a couple of weeks to do a Sunday kind of chat. So if you want to have a look there, she's been posting a couple of videos, some drawing videos, and then I think posted another one just this past week, I think too. So it's kind of strange to see it pop up in my YouTube feed, because it feels like it's been a long time. Hello, 420. I feel like it's been a long time since she's kind of been doing videos on her own. 420, I just watched, actually, I don't know, a couple hours ago, your video was at the Windsor Park comic convention there. Just had a look at that video, saw some good stuff. I've missed the last couple of mini conventions and comic sales. I just can't really afford to go and kind of dig through bins as much as I would love to, and as much as I'm like really jonesing to dig through some bins. One of the things I think you were saying in that video is it seems to be a little harder to find kind of 50 cent and dollar bins, which is too bad. The guy that I always used to go to, Wayne, always had a bunch of 50 cent and dollar bins set up. I don't know if he still does, but other ones were better. This one was a little pricey. Yeah, I hear that. And I think that's also the thing too, right? Like, were there a lot of new faces at the convention selling, like new dealers and things? Because I'm always curious to see if there's new people coming in and what kind of stuff they're bringing. So before we get into it, I didn't read too much this week. Where did I put that stuff? Right here. I didn't read too much this week, but there's a couple things we'll talk about. As usual, at the top of the week, the biggest kind of, well, maybe not the biggest, sorry, I'm going to scale that back a little bit. One of the things that occurred this week was, I didn't have time to look at everyone's, those seem mostly usual folk. Okay. One of the things that happened this week was one of the shows I watch, The Hill Rising, Brianna Joy Gray, who I've talked about before, and Robbie Suave, who is the kind of co-anchor there. So Brianna Joy Gray got fired from The Hill this week. She's had quite a couple of weeks. We talked about her, I think, last weekend when she had taken part in this dissident dialogues sort of quote-unquote debate. So she was catching some flack online from that, a whole bunch of flack. Some really, again, it never ceases to amaze me, the things that people will say online and the horrible shit that people will say to other human beings. It makes me wonder, the fuck did your parents raise you? And what makes you think you're clearly a person who hasn't been punched in the face enough, if you think that you can talk to people that way? It really boggles my mind, the kind of filterless and what people think is acceptable behavior to hurl at another human being. She seems to be taking that in stride. I think she kind of lives on some of that internet drama, if I'm being honest. It doesn't seem to bother, from an outside perspective, doesn't seem to bother her, but it's quite a thing. She was one of the kind of biggest pro-Palestinian voices out there, and very, 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 very critical of Israel. She talks, this is a really good interview. I'm not the biggest Glenn Greenwald fan, but this is a pretty good little half an hour. They did used to work together at The Intercept way back when. It's just great to hear from her some of the things that were happening. Being in entertainment, there's always the face that you put in front of the camera and the face you put in front of the interviews and stuff. And when you see kind of the kind of behavior that happens behind the scenes, she kind of talks about the pressure that she would get to have less clips talking about Palestinians and the pushback she would get. And again, to her credit, she would push forward for stuff they have this thing that they do where they do kind of these monologues, and they call them their radars. She wasn't a fan of doing those radars. Once she started getting to all this pushback, she decided to do more radars because that was one of the ways that she could get to discuss this topic. She talks about the Hill being, as much as they try to kind of appear to be independent and free thinking and those kind of things, they are kind of part of that machine that still exists when it comes to kind of mainstream news outlets and stuff. They're still kind of part of that sort of stream, even though they've got their feet in another one. I unsubscribed to the show. I mean, or the channel rather. She was the reason I was going there. I wouldn't even really watch on Fridays. They always had guest hosts on Fridays. And I was never a fan of them. I was always watching that show to hear from her. I thought that her dialogue, especially with Robbie, when they used to get into knockdown dragouts, I thought that those were incredibly powerful conversations. Again, I think I may have said it here in the past, because I honestly feel that a lot of conversations they were having with each other and arguments they were having with each other, just people in their daily lives are having with family members and friends and things. So I think that kind of seeing that kind of discourse and seeing that kind of dialogue, I think is really, really crucial, because they really did not share of many viewpoints when it comes to what's currently going on over there. Obviously, they also had some other topics where they didn't agree on, but they did have a lot of crossover, which I also thought was very important. They really were independent voices. They really were fearless in kind of stating their opinions on stuff. And I think that's beneficial, because you got to see the times that they did agree. And I think, again, that's something that I pushed a lot on this channel, talked about a lot on this channel, that we need to be looking for ways to communicate with each other. We need to be looking for ways and areas where we agree on things so we can move forward together. You don't have to agree on everything. Yeah, it's really disappointing. She still has her own conversation. She still has her own show. Sorry, the Bad Faith podcast. I think I'm sure she's got a Substack or something, whatever one she's subscribed to. I do subscribe to her Bad Faith YouTube channel as well too. I may go forward and kind of send her some money on Patreon so I can get because I think Thursdays she has a free one, and then I think there's one other day of the week that you have to, if you're a subscriber, you get that show as well too. So I may do that. And she's talking about in this one, it definitely frees up her time to do more of that, more of her own writing, more of her own interviews and podcasts and things. So it's too bad that she'll be gone from there. I'm curious what Robbie's going to say about things. She also made a point of saying, like, Robbie had no idea about this. They fired her while Robbie was away on vacation. He's pushed back on this in the past when she's kind of come up against it again, even though he disagrees with her. So full on props to Robbie Suave for sure, for kind of being what I think seems to be a pretty solid dude, even though he says some insanely stupid things sometimes. I still really like the guy. So if you are interested, you can check this out. It's just like a half an hour. The Due Dissidents guys that I listen to, I thought they were going to have a stream tonight, but maybe not. They have an upcoming interview with Brianna Joy Gray as well. They tend to do longer interviews. So we'll see how long it is, half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half. It really depends on what kind of topics they get into. I'm really looking forward to that, because I feel like we'll get into the meat a little bit more. And it'll give her a chance to kind of talk at length about some of the things, maybe some of the challenges she was facing out there. So make sure that you support all sorts of news sources, rather. Make sure that you listen to a variety of people. Make sure that you kind of dig a little bit. Again, it's this era of, I don't know why anybody would listen to mainstream news except to get like the weather, basically. I just don't understand it when you're getting these much fuller discussions, much more in-depth dialogues with a bunch of people that have very different viewpoints and kind of analyzing things. There's a lot of choices out there. I don't know why you'd want to subject yourself to all sorts of bullshit propaganda in kind of mainstream news. So sorry to see her go. Thank goodness she's still around in general, though. So one of the things that I'm excited for this week, hello, Scott Connor. One of the things I'm looking forward to, let's share this screen to get off of those topics. Here we go. This one here. So talked about this company a million times. This is Nate Hayden and his crew over at Blast City Games. They've done a ton of different games, from Cave Evil to Mushroom Eaters to Rocky Mountain Man to Sea Evil to Freak Face to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A whole bunch of games. One of their long out of print games back from 2010. I think it was San Quentin Kings, then After Pablo, or was it After Pablo, then San Quentin Kings? It was one of, if not the first game that Nate Hayden did, and it is about your drug runners. Basically, you're dealing cocaine, going to Colombia and Mexico and selling it in the United States, and it's an amazing sounding game and one that I've always wanted to play. But because it's been out of print for so long, when copies do come up for sale, they're unbelievably expensive. People are paying like a couple of $100s to get one of these things. He started reprinting. He's doing a reprint of Cave Evil currently, that he had people backing. You could back it. I've already got a copy, so I didn't end up backing it. But in some of the threads and some of the forums on Board Game Geek, he talks about, because people are asking, what are the chances you're going to reprint some of your other older games that are out of print, and go for a ton of money. He said, based on how it goes with Cave Evil, maybe we'll look at that. And kind of the latest update from him is that it was actually easier than they originally thought it would be to reprint that game. So it really kind of gives them incentive to possibly reprint some of their other ones. So if you're a board game fan, if you know any of the games that I've talked about on this channel, if you like the kind of board games I play on this channel, I'd suggest going and checking out designer Nate Hayden, and playing some of his games, whatever you can get your hands on. There's some games that you can do, like I said, print and play. Cave Evil, whole bunch of expansions. Don't Let the Wolves Eat Our Baby. That appeared in an issue of Fangoria magazine, and then he released it as its own game. Freak Face, The House on the Borderland, Mayan Sun Aztec Destiny. That's another one I did a print and play for myself. The Mushroom Eaters, it's one of our big favorites here in the house. We love that game. Psycho Raiders, Rocky Mountain Man. There's San Quentin Kings. So San Quentin Kings was 2007. Then there was an expansion in 2010, which is a really fun game. You play gangs in prison fighting each other, basically. Strongest gang wins. So they've got a real good aesthetic, some really amazing art, and there's always stuff that kind of comes along with the games, as far as like, sometimes there's soundtracks both online, or in the case of Cave Evil, you can buy a cassette tape, which I ended up buying. For this After Pablo, to decide who goes first, it's the person who most recently saw Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, which is a Sam Peckinpah movie. So I downloaded it. My son and I watched it last night. An interesting movie, to say the least. Apparently, it was one of Peckinpah's favorites. He felt that was his best movie because that's the one that he had the most control over. Anyway, After Pablo, you can get, with some of the games, the beauty of the internet is to right here. This one here is the print and the amount of resources you have for some of these board games. So one of the things that happened, let's stop sharing this for a sec. A couple of years ago, Nate found a bunch of the board game boxes. He had a few of them still in stock, just empty boxes, nothing inside. And he kind of put a shout out on the forums, on Board Game Geek, to anybody that wanted one. Just get in touch with him and he'd work out sending it to you. So I was fortunate enough to be one of the people that got one. So I've had this box sitting on the shelf for a couple of years, and just finally decided, yeah, Warren Oates. Yes, exactly right. Warren Oates. Exactly. Finally decided to get off my ass and print up the, just print up the components and contents, and actually give it a play. So one of the ways to get it is through this website, the Wargame Vault. So Nate has a deal with them. They hold on to all the files. I don't know exactly how it works. Some of the money obviously goes to Wargame Vault, and some of the money, I'm assuming, goes to Nate since he's the one that kind of put this out there. You can also, there's a couple of options. You can buy it just to get the print and play PDF files, or you can get the cards and the PDF files. So what happens is they'll, down here, print and play PDF and cards. They'll print everything up for you and send you the cards, and then you have the files to print up the rest of the stuff. The other good resource that is out there these days for getting the kind of game pieces themselves is this German website that I've ordered some stuff from before. And in this one, they have all the kind of components, the little cubes, the little pawns, everything that you can need for the game. Again, Nate himself has recommended this site, and he's used this site for some of his games. And this is where he would have gone to for these components for these games. So you're sort of getting exactly what you would have if you would have bought it right off of him in the past there. Really looking forward to this one. There's one video on YouTube of people doing a playthrough of it as a group. Once I get the cards, that video will be coming from me as well too. I plan to, as I've done with pretty much all of his other games, I plan to do a video going through the game, looking at the components, talking about the rules, maybe editing something and actually playing it, doing like a solo version of it, just to show you the gameplay. So that'll be coming. But I'm pretty amazed. I went to Staples to get them to print up the map boards. So here's all the little components that came in the mail. I'm just waiting for the cards to come in the mail. Some of the tokens that I printed up myself and just put on, what do you call it, in the picture frame. When you have the card in the picture frames, what the hell is the word for it now? I used some of that material to print up and to mount the game board itself. I was impressed with Staples, though, the paper that they had available to print the boards on, and just how little time it took. The options that I have, mat board is the word I'm looking for. So I got them printed up and then mounted them with spray glue onto this mat board just to kind of stiffen them up a little bit. So they came out amazingly well. Had to cut the board into 4 sections to kind of get it all to fit into the box. But it looks way better than I thought it would. And it actually makes me want to reprint the game board for Aztec Sun, Mayan Destiny, because I want to mount that on this as well too. So anyway, so that video is coming soon once those cards come in the mail. Very excited to play this game. It's one of the ones I've wanted to play from him for the longest time, since I first heard about it. All right. Let's see. What did I miss? MSM, less mind nourishing than pop music. Yeah, absolutely. Want to watch your whole weekend go by in a flash? Spend just a few hours on BGG. Absolutely. I don't go on Board Game Geek nearly as much as I used to. I used to live on that thing. And our friend John here on YouTube, that's where I first met him, on Board Game Geek. Mr. Joan Jello. Okay, so let's talk comics. What do I got? I read a couple tonight. Finished off a couple tonight. So let's talk about those first. And the one that I'll start off with the one that I'll say the least about, because I do want to talk. Dan Elson, how you doing? I want to talk about this one with Rasa on our next chat. She read it. I didn't have a chance to get to it this weekend. I just read it tonight before the stream. This issue of Kaya is number, what the hell number were we on here? Does that say 19? And it's a standalone, so it's time for their standalone issue where they have a backup story. In this instance, a backup story done by Junie Ba, who's doing the Boy Wonder comic as well. This is kind of Kaya in the future, and Ross and I will talk about it. I like these standalone issues quite a bit. It kind of breaks up the story, and especially at this point where this last arc I felt was kind of dull. I wasn't really into it. This is a real welcome kind of single issue here, just to kind of break the spell of that previous arc and kind of get us into whatever's coming next. He talks about in this one, Wes Craig talks about in this one, he has his idea for Kaya was to do 50 issues. He's, as he even says, it happens to everybody, so don't get too excited about it. He's been approached from Hollywood to option this to potentially make into a movie, but as he states, it happens a lot. They end up optioning a ton of stories just in case they decide to kind of do something, so it doesn't necessarily mean something's going to get made. Honestly, if the next arc is kind of not as exciting as the previous one, I'm not going to make it 50 issues. I'm giving it a couple of more issues to see how it goes, but I'm really on the verge of kind of like, I'm kind of done with this one as much as I've enjoyed it. I felt it's really started to decline, but this single issue was a really great one. This brings it back to kind of what I like about the book. This was a really good story here. The Boy Wonder issue number 2, as I said, Junie Ba doing the writing and art on this one. Is that true? Let's make sure we get that right. Written and drawn by Junie Ba, colored by Chris O'Halloran. So part 2 of our Boy Wonder story here. In this one, we get him hanging out with Red Hood, who is Jason Todd, of course. Forgive me if I screw up some of these names. A lot of these characters aren't on the tip of my tongue, even after reading the book. This one I liked this one a little bit less than the first one. It was still good, really dealing with themes of family and these children kind of coping with their father figure as Batman and Bruce Wayne and things. That kind of theme does get a little tired. I feel like it's one of the things with Batman stories and some of the superhero stories that I really that interest me the least is kind of the revisiting similar themes book after book after book. I understand, I get it. I just, it's not for me, so that's kind of why I stay away. The saving grace with this one is I still really like Junie Ba's art in this quite a bit, and I like the coloring. So I dig it for that, and I think it's just going to be a mini series. So at this point, I'm probably going to stick with it. But this issue interested me much less than the first one did. Like, there's some villain character here. I have no idea if that's a character from the Batman universe. It's nobody that I know, and he keeps referring to kind of his boss. So we guess there's someone above him. Is it going to be Scarecrow, or is it going to be Joker, or who the hell is it going to be? I guess we'll find out at some point. Or is it going to be Ra's al Ghul? You know, who knows? Yeah, so story-wise, didn't really do much for me, but art-wise, I really like it. It's a pretty nice looking book. I like that kind of cartoonier art when it comes to some of this superhero stuff. As much as I love the realism and things like that too, I really gravitate towards this style for the Batman books. So that's issue number 2. The long awaited do I go there first? Nah, maybe we'll, what do I have back here? There's not that much that we've read. Yeah, I'll save those 3. Okay, we'll do this one. So the long awaited hello Daryl D. Dan saying he agrees the last arc wasn't as good as the first 2. Yeah, I'm assuming you're talking Kaya. Yeah. The long awaited Jason Aaron making his I don't know, entering the world of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Sorry, very important message coming through from my wife about cider, which I must respond yes to. She's doing a market this evening over at the Assiniboine Downs, and it ends in about an hour. Her booth is set up right next door to this. Is it Wild Horse Cider or something, or Dead Horse Cider? I think it's Dead Horse Cider. So she's gonna pick me up some cider. I've been a good boy. I get a treat. So this has Jason Aaron and Chris Burnham on art. When I think of Chris Burnham, there's a grittiness for sure. He's not like a Frank Quietly where it's really kind of crisp. Even though in my mind sometimes I know that they're different people, but there's some of these artists like the Ian Bertrams of the world and people where I sort of end up lumping them into the same group, even though I'm very aware that they're different people and I'm very aware that their styles aren't 100% similar. In my mind, they all kind of exist in a similar kind of universe, though. What I didn't realize about Burnham is how fucking spot on this son of a bitch is for a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story. I had no idea until I saw it on the page how incredibly well his style fits into this universe. And I think for me, as I've said before, I don't know the new Turtle books that much, which we'll get to when we get the second story in here. I'm more familiar with the older stuff, especially more recently as I've started digging into it. This feels like vintage Ninja Turtles, though, and it's really due to kind of this grittier art that's really, really good, but sort of isn't quite there like his style is. It's got edges, it's got roughness, and it works beautifully. And this story really caught me. The only thing that was a pisser was that we didn't get a ton of story. I'm really looking forward to the Jason Aaron stuff. This makes me even more excited about it. There's some sort of group where you can pay money to hunt these freaks, as they call them in here, I think, or these mutants. I can't remember if they call them freaks or mutants, but this little loser kind of guy comes in and he wants to fight Donatello here. And of course gets his ass handed to him. Toot fucking sweet. But that sort of sets up the world that he's living in. We get a little bit of insight into Donatello's mindset. That he's not quite there. He's talking to a rat that he says is Splinter. He's hallucinating. He doesn't really... He's clearly dealing with some issues. So it's a really intriguing little story that really catches my attention. What didn't work for me, and it's not the fault of the book, it's purely on me because I just don't know the stuff, is this last story, which takes up kind of 3/4 of this enormously thick book. I didn't get much out of this. I didn't really like the art. I don't know any of the characters. I don't really know what's going on. I don't know how this relates anymore because I've missed so much. Rasa is really up to date on this world, and I think she was really digging this story from what she was saying this afternoon. She obviously knows a lot of the characters. She's curious where it's going to go. It's not the TMNT that she was reading, but she's kind of happy to see that it's still going to exist in kind of a good way. This is like very Island of Dr. Moreau type of storyline here. But yeah, so nothing really stood out. I think I ended up kind of, as I got further on in the story, just kind of skimming over pages. I didn't even find myself reading every single word. It just isn't really for me, I don't think. I don't even find anything super interesting about these characters. I don't know how much of an appearance these worlds are going to blend into each other. From what I'm understanding, they are two different worlds. They also have another Mutant Nation #1 coming out in September. So it feels like they're going to be expanding this universe. What I do like seeing, though, the one time I like seeing a checklist is when a checklist looks like this. When it's not every single month or every single week, there's like 10 books that you have to pick up, quote unquote, to get the whole story. This looks manageable. So I'm going to try to keep up with this and grab the books. Like I said, especially the Jason Aaron stuff, I'm very excited for, and even more so with that first story. And looking at who else he's going to be working with: Joel Jones, Cliff Chang, Raphael Albuquerque, and then, of course, Chris Burnham on the Donatello book. So quite a list of heavy hitters there. So a decently thick book for, how much was this son of a bitch? $6.99. So a little steep, but I'm glad I picked it up, even if it is just for that first short story there. I finished reading the new issue of Sickness came out. That's the other thing I was going to punch up. Let's do that right now. Stand by. As I spell it completely incorrect, and it found it anyway. The beauty of the internets. Let's see. Let's share this. So the Sickness is starting to come out. Yeah, here we go. Book 1. Let's share screen again. An announcement from a bunch of people on Twitter. I clearly can't do two things at once. There we go. Now that I've done it, now I can keep talking. So Sickness. Fuck. You can get a subscription. I clicked the wrong goddamn button. So they're offering Sickness Volume 2 subscriptions right now through Uncivilized Books. So it's uncivilizedbooks.com, the Sickness subscription. $55. You can get, there's 4 different things that you can subscribe to. So digital only. The reader, printed comic book format can't be beat. All comics shipped in a sturdy envelope. You also get digital versions ahead. There's the collector pack. You care about the condition of your comic. Each issue will ship in sturdy Gemini mailer. And then you can get the completest one, which is the one I was looking at. You want all the covers, everything from the collector tier. And you also get available covers shipped in sturdy Gemini mailers for maximum protection. Blah, 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 blah. And you get stuff, additional details. First issue ships mid-October, offer valid until October 15th, 2024. So if you want to subscribe to it, you can ensure that you get stuff. There's also what I did end up ordering is there's book 1, which I'm not seeing up here. Here we go. Volume 1 trade paperback right now for $20. So I ended up picking this one up. It's oversized is what Jenna Chow was saying on Twitter, which kind of was really what really caught my interest. I think there was, yes. So so I've ordered already. So 129 are available, where if you order it and you're in that number, you get a book plate as well too. So I made it, I ordered damn quick so I could get a book plate as well. So if you're curious about this story and want to get this first chunk in one volume and read it, this is a pretty damn good way. It seems to be quite a hit for Uncivilized Books. They seem to be doing pretty well with it, which is great. And I finished, let's see what I missed. Did you read the Chris Burnham, Robert Kirkman book, Die, Die, Die? No, I haven't. I know about it, but I've never read it. It was so bonkers and violent and fun. I think you'd love it. Awesome. Does this mean the Sickness Volume 2 won't be coming out in single issues? It will be coming out in single issues, but there's going to be a bit of a delay. This just gives you an opportunity to make sure that you get all those and you can subscribe to it. So you'll get a digital version, and then you'll eventually get the individual issues as well too. There's a little bit of delay when you get those single issues, but it still will be coming out as single issues, so you can get it the same way that you've always been getting it, or in my case, going to the comic shop. I just may subscribe to it just as kind of like a show of support. I've got to sell some stuff first before I can do that, but as a show of support for the company and for the creators, just to kind of like invest in that title, because I do want to see where it's going. So, so issue number 5 came out this week. This is the cover that I grabbed. There was 2 covers, and this is the one that appealed to me the most here. Beautiful stuff. This one really spells out the story quite a bit more. I feel like we really took some steps forward in this one. I really dug this issue. I just finished reading it tonight as well. One of our main characters is doing an autopsy on a woman who's died, who is kind of having these visions. That is kind of the premise of this book. One of our other main characters is hallucinating, and he's found kind of what he refers to as kind of these honeycomb holes in her brain. And he starts to kind of dig into it and research. And he comes across, or once he's compiled all this information, he is seeing that this is a disease that's working its way through the country. And he's mapped it out as to where it's kind of grown roots within the country. He's now at a point where he's going to be reaching out, or he's reached out to another doctor friend of his to help him kind of uncover what exactly is going on. And then on our kind of secondary story, we have our main character who is deep into hallucination territory now. Apparently, the hallucinations of a man following you are kind of the last hallucinations that you get before you die. So this guy is full on into it, where he can't do anything without hallucinating. He can't look at his parents without hallucinating. He can't, this woman comes to visit him and he can't even make direct eye contact with her without hallucinating her disfigurement and things like that. So Jenna Cha has really kind of upped it here, as far as we have a lot of kind of horrific images throughout this one. When our main character's mom here starts coming for him, he's snuck out of the house. He's been told he can't leave the house because he's had these incidences out there, and people are kind of mocking him and making fun of him. So I think there's a bit of embarrassment, but it's hard sometimes to discern what's really being said to him and what's kind of in his mind from these sort of monsters screaming and yelling at him. So there's a nice blurring of the lines there of we don't even know as the readers what he's really looking at. So it was a solid issue. So now it's on a bit of a hiatus. What does it say at the back? The sickness will return this fall with issue number 6. So quite a bit of a wait. And again, like I've said before, it's the long wait within this book that I hope doesn't bite them in the ass, which is also why I want to help kind of get that word out there about the subscription model for the next issues, because I do feel like the wait with a story like this, you will probably have to revisit a couple of issues to kind of get back on. I find it sometimes hard to kind of get right back into the story even after a month, because I feel like it's kind of a little more denser storytelling. I'm also very excited to get that trade for that exact reason, to kind of sit and read the whole thing as one chunk, and hopefully absorb the story a little bit better. So that's Sickness. And the last 2 books tonight, ones that I talked about this afternoon with Rasa as well. There's a new Rick Remender book out there called Grommets. That's going to be a 7-issue miniseries. This is issue number 1 that's come out. It's written by Rick Remender and Brian Posen. The art is by Brett Parson and Moreno. Sorry, let me make sure that I get the names proper here. Moreno Denizio is the colorist. Yeah, the artist is Brett Parson. So there's the credits there at the top of the page. So from what I'm gathering from the back matter in this one, from both Rick and Brian, this is kind of their childhood discovering skateboarding. There's one story that goes on in here, which we'll get to in a minute, that's directly something that happened to Brian. So this was great. I love this. I love this kind of Mad Magazine type of artwork that's going on here. This is a funny book too. Like I feel like this is going to be a little more kind of lighthearted and almost slapstick, but really a slice of life. It was amazing just kind of reading this story again. I had a skateboard when I was young. I'm not saying that I was any good on it. I couldn't do a trick to save my life, but I hung out with a bunch of skaters. And at that time that we were hanging out, it was still kind of a lot of, oh, is that true? 420. Brian Posen, comedian from stuff like Mr. Show. Really? Hey, if that's true, that's news to me. I loved Mr. Show. I remember this time pretty well. Like I when I was hanging out with these skaters, when kind of the group of us would hang out, that was a time where there was a lot of like punk rockers. One of the guys, or a couple of the guys, had mohawks. It wasn't kind of skaters as we sort of know them now. It was still kind of like the real punk rock kind of scene. And it was something that was, as they kind of talk about in here too, it was your own little world. You had your own language. There was your own music. You were really outside of kind of the mainstream and society in general. I mean, there was one guy who, speaking of not knowing how to do tricks, the only trick he knew was to use his skateboard as a weapon when inevitably somebody would try to fuck with us. And he was kind of the go-to guy in the group that would kind of step up and sort of protect us all a little bit. And he talks about like the music that people were listening to. You know, like I remember Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique being a big on our playlist for a while. That was maybe later era of skating when we were sitting around getting high all the time. But a friend of mine, Vance Steves, his little brother was an incredible skater and ended up skating for a team, I believe. But I don't quite remember. That was kind of a lifetime ago. So really, really great story. So the new kid in school meets this guy here. This guy is talking a big game about what a great skater he is. And of course, the way he's talking about it, you know, he's full of shit. So these other kind of guys, the kind of the bullies of the story, are kind of pressuring him like, all right, man, let's see you go. Come on, let's prove your worth. So he goes shooting down the bowl. And the passage that I loved so much here was him gritting his teeth. And we get a flashback of a meteor shower sending a rock down from outer space, landing in the molten lava, existing and being used as a tool by cavemen, jewelry. What else do we have here? Just rocks on roads for these towns that are popping up until finally getting picked up by a bird and dropped right into the bowl here, where anybody who's skateboarded or roller skated, you know that it just takes the tiniest pebble to jam your tire on, and he goes flying and kind of does a face plant, brace yourself, and ends up looking like this. And apparently it's something that happened to Brian, this exact story. So grisly, hilarious, really well drawn, really well told. I thought that passage was just hilarious. I laughed out loud at it. This is going to be a really fun book, I think. So I'm very, very glad I gave this one a chance. Issue 1 of 7. Really, really great. I just read that Gromit's comic last night. Pretty fun. I met Brian Posehn at a con once, and he was awesome. Yes, he is from Mr. Show. That's killer. He also wrote a Deadpool run and a comic called The Last Christmas that are both fun reads. Cool. I'll have to check him out. Yeah, so a damn good one. No surprise, really. I mean, Remender stuff is always worth trying out. It's nice to see him kind of offer a little bit more of a lighthearted story, though, instead of getting a real heavy, another heavy book from him. And last but absolutely not least, probably my read of the week, another thick book. Issue number 1 of Precious Metal. This is from Hassan Otsmani El Hadu and Ben Didier, Darcy Van Polgeest, Ian Bertram, Matt Hollingsworth doing an amazing job on coloring. So Darcy Van Polgeest is the writer. Ian Bertram is the artist. This takes place in the Little Bird world. This is 35 years before the events of Little Bird Book 1. So after reading this issue, I need to go back to Little Bird Book 1 and read that again. It's been a while since I've read it. This was a fucking stunning first issue. And just when I think that comic book colorists can't get any better, fucking Hollingsworth pulls out some textures that I don't think I've ever really seen. I know it's not showing up on camera. You really need to see this with your own eyes. There's this texture on the faces and on these characters that look so much like pencil crayon that I'm not convinced that it's not pencil crayon. It's an amazing texture. I'm assuming that it's digital. It's amazing texture that I don't think I've seen on a book. There's something really different about it. And Ian Bertram has stepped up his game as far as the art goes. There's a little write-up at the back that they've been working on this for a few years at this point. And they said, if we're going to do this, we've got to do this. Like, we've got to commit to this, and we've got to make this world unique, and we've got to take this story places that we never even thought of. So they really put some time into this, And man, oh man, if the rest of this series is anything like this first book, I think this is going to be a pretty incredible piece of work here, because I love this first issue. There's some of the backgrounds and some of the design and things that really remind me of Lesniewski, Matt Lesniewski, and it made me think I would love to see Bertram and Lesniewski work on something together. I think their styles would work really nicely together. I don't have any ideas beyond that, but if you guys work together, full credit goes to me, and I'll just take 10%. I think we'll be fine. So right now it feels like it's one of those books that also I need to sit and reread. I did retain some of it, but not very much of it, because honestly, I was so taken by the art in this one that the story was really in the background for me. I was so absorbed with every single panel in this. I'm a huge Ian Bertram fan anyway. Little Bird was great. House of Penance was a fantastic read. It was my favorite read of that year that it came out. And that was kind of the introduction to Bertram as an artist. So goddamn good. And again, like, Hollingsworth needs a huge amount of credit in this. Like, the colorist always needs credit, but I say it honestly, this would not be the same book if it wasn't for Hollingsworth's work on this. His use of color and kind of from kind of scene to scene, the way he sets a tone and the color palettes that he chooses for different scenes and the way they contrast with each other was fucking unbelievable. We'll get to a section here. So we enter this world of kind of like blues, and I love some of these background elements here. The colors on them are really nice as well. Our main character kind of gets absorbed by this creature, and kind of given over to the bad guys who beat the shit out of him, looking for information about this child that he was trying to rescue. And when they don't get the information, or they're starting to not get the information from him, and you're wondering, they're basically going to kill him, someone ends up coming from this cult, and they've got this jacket on and ends up blowing up everybody in the surroundings. Our main character gets dunked in the water, and we do a page turn to this beautiful, beautiful set of pages here. This kind of texture and water is gorgeous, and that darkness on it is beautiful. We start coming out of that, and eventually we make our way to, again, getting back into these blues and purples. And then we start to get our introduction to the bad guys. What's a good bad guy color? Black and white and red, I think, is pretty good. But again, as much as it's kind of maybe been played out, it still has quite an impact. These pages have quite an impact when you hit this part of the story. After everything else you've been exposed to, it really ends up standing out in a really, really amazing way. So amazing stuff, really great imagination, gorgeous, gorgeous art. Storytelling was great, but again, I need to reread it because I was just really taken with the art. I'm so looking forward to this. I forgot that it was coming out this week, so I had to make a special trip to 204 Comics on Saturday to make sure that I got a copy. There was only a couple left on the shelf, so I'm glad I was able to track one down. If you don't know this book, if you don't know Ian Bertram, this is a fantastic place to start. I do feel like even if you haven't read Little Bird, you can get into this story, at least at this point. I don't know where it's going to lead to, but I don't think that you need to read Little Bird to kind of get into at least this first issue. So give it a shot if you are interested at all. Let's see here. I loved Little Bird so much, and I'm glad they took the time to do the follow-up right. I agree. I haven't read it yet, but I bought it on Wednesday and can't wait to dig into it. Yeah, it was the first thing I read when I came home. I immediately kind of dove into it. It's one of those books for me. And I agree with you. Like, I'm really glad they took their time. It's one of the things that it's so nice that a kind of a new generation of creators and artists are not kind of really pulled into that world of we have to get out a book every month. We have to do it this way. I understand wanting to do it that way. And I do see the pitfalls like we were talking about with Sickness. When you don't have that regular schedule, you can lose readers. But on the flip side, you do end up, I think, getting a lot more quality people that are actually putting the time in to give you a story that's unique and that they've really poured themselves into. And every single page reads like that on this one. Paul in the 619 looks dope. Going to check it out. Hi, by the way. Hello. Thanks for joining us. So that's all that I read this week. I'm still tucking into, I was just reading it before the stream. I know. I've never read The Crooked Man. I realize that everybody on earth has read it. I'm slow for some of these things. I've just started The Crooked Man in this now, and I'm already blown away. Amazing storytelling so far. That first panel where you first see the Crooked Man in all his glory is really amazing. And even Mignola says that in the intro. He's like, there's some stories that he's like, I never could have created the Crooked Man the way that Corbin did for this story. So for reasons like that alone, I'm so glad I had a chance to work with him. So I think that's fantastic. Really, really great story, though. Beautiful, beautiful book. Rasa was asking for kind of like a video just looking at this book. So I'll probably do that. I don't know if I'll do it tonight. What time is it? 10:30. I might end up kind of setting up for that and coming back just to kind of do a flip through of this book. They do an incredible job, as they always have at Dark Horse, in kind of doing this fabric spine and stuff. And I'm really digging this. I'm really glad I got my hands on that sucker. Some good shit right there. All right. Next weekend, we'll probably be back. Well, actually, maybe we won't. It's Father's Day next weekend. So we'll see. We might be back for a chat on my channel with Rasa. If not, we'll see you the next week. Right on, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Take it easy.